Haruki Murakami's mindset toward being a novelist and the energy he brings to the table is very unique. And today we are going to be talking about that and his advice on how to adopt his, something akin to his mindset in your own writing career. And my name is Ian, and on this channel, we cover everything related to the greatest authors and books of all time. And Murakami is one of them. And if you check the playlist down below, I already have a ton of videos on Murakami if you are interested in more on him. And let us now hear from Murakami himself on the mindset we should be having. Quote, another reason novelists can be so magnanimous is that they understand literary business is not a zero-sum game. In other words, the fact that a new writer has appeared in the ring almost never means someone already there will have to step down. On the surface, at least, that kind of thing doesn't happen. In that sense, the world of writers and the world of professional athletes are diametrically opposed. In pro sports, when a rookie makes the team, an old-timer or another new player who has failed to impress is either given their walking papers or moved to the far end of the bench. No parallel exists in the literary world. In the same vein, when a new novel sells 100,000 copies, that total isn't subtracted from the total sales of other works. To the contrary, a runaway bestseller by a new writer can give the whole publishing industry a boost. Guys, there is wisdom here that everyone needs to take to heart. Like, this is some of the most important stuff that you should have at the foundation of your mindset, because Murakami is right. Even though writing feels competitive, because right now you are at the bottom of the totem pole, most likely. You aspire to being a pro writer and being taken seriously and people loving your work. But this isn't sports. There is only a limited amount, of quarterback positions available in college and in the NFL, and that number gets smaller and smaller. Even if the NFL continues to grow and have record numbers like it did at this year's Super Bowl, there aren't going to be 40 teams next year. But with the arts, the market could rapidly expand. When you look at authors like, for instance, Cormac McCarthy, who writes a book like No Country for Old Men, then it gets turned into an Academy Award-winning movie, his audience expanded overnight. When Oprah selected him for her book club, he gained millions of new readers, if not hundreds of thousands, is probably more likely, overnight. But the job of being a writer is hard, and there's so many different things to balance. And at the start of your career, when you were reading the greats, when you were reading your favorite authors like a Murakami, you're like, how do I get there? And there's this kind of edge to it, and you want to feel competitive. And speaking of great authors, I recently compiled a free document with Murakami's favorite 32 books and authors, and you will find this nowhere else online. There is no list, no one resource that will bring together all of Murakami's favorites. So go to the description down below, click on the link, and check out that free document if you want to see his favorite books and authors. And the other problem with competitiveness in writing is that most of us, unfortunately, were brought up in the public education system, which is competitive. It doesn't need to be competitive necessarily, but academics, are somewhat akin to athletics. I have been a high school English teacher for the past 7 years, and I also attended a public school. And there is a hierarchy in terms of the smart kids and the dumb kids. People look down upon you. I'm sure some of you guys out there were A+ students, but there were others who, some of you guys, didn't do so well in school because maybe you just didn't like it. But that didn't mean that you were dumb, but people thought you were dumb because you had a 1.6 GPA or something. And this creates a lot of academic trauma and makes you see, because you get polarized, even though you think it's bullshit, like, yeah, that's bullshit, man. You are put in this hierarchy, and thus, until you can break free of it, you will always relate to that system when thinking about others in terms of it in an academic or even creative way. And so, and this is further reinforced when you get into university programs, because you're in there and usually you have a professor that hasn't written anything good anyway. But down the line, there are scholarships, there are fully funded MFA programs. It's competitive to get in, but all that is a big hoax too, because 99% of writers that get a bachelor's degree and get their MFA, after that 7 years of training to be a writer, 99% of them didn't release a book in that time. And to get an MFA or even a PhD in creative writing, you can do that without having the ability to write a good sentence in a fictional story or a poem. Yes, you heard me right. They don't judge, they don't give grades out anymore in MFA programs or even undergrad programs for creative writing. And to get a PhD in creative writing or in English, you have to write about creativity. You have to write a thesis. And so maybe you can write decently there, but academic writing does not translate to non-academic fiction or poetry. And plus, there's diversity quotas and government money funding, blowing this all up out of proportion. And so writers really don't have to work and really don't have to communicate with their audience. And so there's this weird competitive nature to it because of fellowships and the small amount of professor jobs. And so Murakami is asking us to break free from that because he did. Because Murakami had an intuition. He had a calling at that baseball game in that famous moment where he gets inspired. He's like, I want to be a novelist. And the rest of his career kind of followed that in suit. He would stay up until 7 or 8 a.m. writing his first novel and his second novel. And, he continued on and eventually became full-time. But he's a very intuitive author, and that's obviously apparent with his magical realism and other stuff. But in the real author community, we want to help each other. Like I am here right now, giving my time to a market on YouTube that is actually not growing and doesn't produce very much money. But I know my writing career, my reading career is going to be enhanced if I make a big splash, if I really inspire some of you guys to pursue writing, if I inspire millions of people to start reading, then we will have a place in the market. We are going to be able to make decisions. And when the publishers look and are like, damn, a lot of people are reading Cormac McCarthy still, he's selling a million books a year. They're going to be like, okay, we're going to give this new guy a chance. This, 28-year-old who writes Westerns or Southern Gothic. Like, let's see what he's got. Like, let's try it. But because the market is so small and it's so competitive, especially outside the university system, when you see someone sell a big novel, all the negative feelings start to come up because most of us hate our jobs. Like over 90% of you guys hate your job. You wish that you could be doing something else, be a writer, be some of this. If you could, you would switch immediately. Most people are unhappy in their relationship, are unhappy with their body, like very unhappy. And because most people exist in base consciousness for most of their life and aren't working on personal development or these things, when they see someone being successful, they get very resentful. And I went to school with a guy named Joe Milan Jr. And he, I think last year released a novel called The All-American. And he got it published with a big house and, that's a big deal. That's awesome. But a mutual acquaintance of both of us, knew that was going on. And this, when I said like, damn, that's so awesome. Like, dude, Joe, like he got it published. He said, well, that's just because he markets, he networks. He goes to all these agency things and he got a good agent. And like, that's why they got him in. And I was like, are you crazy? We both know that dude, like in his office has a sheet of paper that says deep work hours and every single he's in there. And if there's one distraction, he doesn't mark that, take that off. And there's the sheets are filled. Like he has put an inordinate amount of time into writing and takes it very seriously and studies it and helps others. Like he does deserve this. And this is good. This should show us, people in the program with him, who are around him, that we can do this too, that he is no different than us, that at the end of the day, maybe he works harder for stuff, but he's not some god that these people, and, I've seen one of my other professors, Douglas Unger, in the 1980s, he was in the top 3 for the National Book Award for fiction. And he talked about how that competitiveness, like that kind of big splash really was isolating and hard for him because he was in this world and there was all this kind of negative attention on him. And that's the point of this channel, Right Conscious. Like I want us to flip that mentality because Murakami is right. When the Blood Meridian movie comes out, when something is adapted, more people get into reading. Even, I hate to say this, but like Book Talk, more people have been red-pilled into, deeper novels by Book Talk than probably if it ever existed. I have met females before. I know my audience is like 98% men. Like this is crazy. I've talked to a female before, you guys, who has told me this is like news from above. Like these are secret encrypted keys that she got back into reading with Colleen Hoover. But because she liked reading so much, she kept just looking for more depth and talking to people about reading, and they started recommending her new books. And now she's pivoted to a whole nother direction, reading literary fiction and these types of things. She's also read Murakami. I've talked to her about that. And speaking of her, and this is a great segue, she is a member of the Right Conscious Book Club, which hosts a Murakami book club within it. The Right Conscious Book Club reads 6 to 10 books at a time. This is unlike any other book club offered on BookTube. But one of the staples of the club is that we're always reading a Murakami novel. Right now, this week, we are starting Novelist as a Vocation. Murakami's last book, it's about writing. It's about your mindset as an author. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. And if you want to join in with a group that is reading it, or in the future, we'll be going through Murakami's fictional works if you want to join us, because this year Murakami is releasing a new novel. I want to kind of bring that energy. We would love to have you. Also included in the Substack where the book club is at is we have a writing group with daily and weekly challenges where we write together. I host office hours where you can talk to me daily. If you can't make the book club calls, you and I can just chat at really any time. I make the times vastly different every single day. And so if you're interested in talking about Murakami with others and reading other books and things of that nature, the link is down in the description below. And what's also beautiful about writing and what makes it different than almost anything else I've ever come across is that you can improve into your 80s and 90s. Today in one of the book clubs, I was talking with the group about our favorite authors, and we found that most of them wrote their best works in their like late 40s and in their 50s. And a lot of other people I love, it's 60s, their 70s, their 80s. Cormac McCarthy just released 2 books and he was 90 years old. But when you look at that athletics or even art or directing films, a lot of the time the energy can't be there because to direct a film or be a part of certain endeavors requires a massive amount of physical endurance. As writing does require endurance, but you can mostly sit and work things out over a long period of time and let it ruminate in your head. So what you and I are engaging in is a multi-decade long process. I would consider, say I could do this till I'm 90 years old. So if you're 20, you have 7 decades left to become a good writer, to put something good out there. Because most people in the world have never released something that's creatively beautiful and unique in their lifetime. And so even if you don't end up on a booktuber shelf one day, that doesn't necessarily matter because you could become a legend in your own right. Today, I was on one of the calls. There were 4 Canadians on the call. All 4 of them were Canadians. And I'm also Canadian. And we were talking about Canadian authors. And I was like, dude, there's this one dude, Mark Anthony Jarman. And none of them had ever heard of him before. And he's Canadian. And that's fine. He's not a popular author. But I was like, dude, this guy blew my mind. This guy taught me things about writing just through his short stories that I rave about every single day. At the start of the year with my classes, this is who we talk about. My creative writing club at school, in the course, in the writing course, like anything I'm doing, I'm talking about this guy. I don't think he's earned more than $10,000 in his career from writing, but he left something behind and it was so good it got people talking about it. What's crazy about him, it's all connecting. Joe Milan Jr. showed me. He's like, bro, you got to read this. Like, oh my God, this is like crazy. You've never seen anything like this. I'm like, okay, I'm in. And then it was, and the promise was fulfilled. Like, holy hell. And so you can do that one day. You can shock people like that. I don't know. Like sometimes it just doesn't translate. Sometimes everything doesn't fall into its place. I mean, and that's sometimes in the author's control. Sometimes you do need to market yourself or like give yourself pushes or network. Like I was saying, Joe did earlier, like to make sure you find bigger opportunities. Like if it doesn't seem like there's much interest in you, but you don't even have to do that. You could literally sit on your ass your entire life, never make a video, never have a social media and blow someone's mind and then help others. Without Mark Anthony Jarman or other people, I wouldn't be here right now. Like I promise you guys, if I wouldn't be as far along as if I didn't have this, like I would be totally different. My whole approach got changed. And this was before I really started taking this channel seriously. I have personally sold thousands of novels by promoting other people's works. I've gotten people time and time again email me. I haven't read since high school. Now I read, 100 books a year and it's all because of you, man. Like I get comments like that every single day. We are lifting each other up. This is why I like the critic Harold Bloom. He elevates people. That's what we need to be doing. The deconstructionists, the left and the right, who are both problematic in terms of the arts because they've become so polarized now. There's cancel culture on the left and tearing people down for their work or like certain things. And then on the right, there's like the cancellation of thought and ideas because of like religious radicalism. And so it's not really necessarily through law. Sometimes it is in like certain states, but most of the time it's within the family and they just don't allow any kind of outside thought. Both don't allow outside thought. And so there's this kind of negativity. And then just with online culture and forums and anonymity and being able to just talk shit about people online, like, even though sometimes on here I go a little bit crazier, I've gone after other booktubers. I do take shots at some authors like book talkers and stuff. But in general, that's to serve a lot of larger purpose. And in my personal life, I am the biggest champion of everything. I'm positive. with my students. Like, I'm like, bro, you're so good. Even if they can barely write a sentence, even if they are reading Captain Underpants, I'm like encouraging them. I'm like, let's go. Like, this is real literature, bro. You're doing it. And when I talk about people, I hope when you hear me tell stories about authors and about myself and these things, that you feel more motivated, that you see a bigger potentiality. And why would you want to go the other direction? Like, honestly, the crazies will get weeded out, or they'll just be in their own clique with the crazies. You don't need to be the policeman. And trust me, I've been there before. You don't need to tell us, you need to help us. You need to show us or create for us. Because we can have thousands of professional football teams of writers. But right now in the literary fiction world, it is limited. It really is like 30 teams with maybe, 80 players each. Was that like 2,400 people? That would make sense. There's a couple thousand professional literary fiction novelists who don't have to teach university and are doing it full time. Probably less than that. But a lot of us view that number as limited. I want to get in that number. Instead, I can add to that number. And that mentality makes it easy. That mentality makes it easier to send your stuff out, to share your stuff, to start, looking into marketing techniques and listening to my channel where I help build up new authors and help them get their first couple members or like readers. So this is the start of a storm of Murakami content. So I hope you're ready. There's a playlist down below with all the videos. There's a book club if you ever have the time and money to come and join us. And if not, I will see you guys in the next Murakami video.